On Sunday night, I showed you a lot of our projections for point spreads. And of course, a lot of people wildly misinterpreted what we were talking about around here. What we did not do Sunday night was predict games. What we did not do was give you our opinion on what the numbers should be. What we did simply was tell you with about 5 or 6 games of the year, I think we just did week 1 actually, we told you what we thought the Vegas number was going to be. Now, I got ripped to pieces up and down the wall and sideways twice on Sunday about the LSU at UCLA line. A lot of you just got all bent out of shape about the Georgia and Clemson line. Well, Jesse, as you know, because you have the graphic right there in your holster ready to fire at any second, what was eventually going to happen and why I kept my mouth shut is someone was going to be proven right and then you were going to be proven wrong. You're looking at the someone here. Do I sound cocky? Yes, I do, because this is no longer theoretical. Let's take a look at how we fared, shall we? Keep in mind, all we had to go on was our unique intuition around here. We said North Carolina would open as a 6-point favorite. They opened as a 6.5-point favorite. We liked Bama minus 18 against Miami. Bama opened minus 17.5. We liked Clemson minus 4 against Georgia. Clemson minus 4 it was against Georgia. Here's the one that I told you was going to get a lot of traction. We told you LSU was going to be under a field goal favorite at UCLA. Not only were they, the odds makers went even closer to 0 than we did. I went LSU minus 2.5. They opened at LSU minus 1.5. And then what was part B of that? If you'll recall, I told you that was going to be the heaviest bet side immediately. And lo and behold, LSU all the way up to 3 already. We liked Notre Dame minus 10. They gave us Notre Dame minus 9.5. And I thought the easiest one on the board was Louisville versus Ole Miss. We had Ole Miss minus 7 and they had Ole Miss minus 7. And so it was that we were really validated by the odds makers. Now, we'll actually down the road a little ways get to pick which side we like in those games. And I want to stress, the picking is what we haven't done yet. A projection is just that, a projection. The one that caught me by surprise, conveniently the one I didn't send Jesse to put in the graphic, was Wisconsin. They host Penn State to start the year. Wisconsin, I thought they were going to be up north of 6, maybe 6.5, and they're favored by 4.5. Now, you may think 2 points, what's the difference? To me, it's a huge difference. I don't like being more than a half point, maybe at the max a point off on these. And you may also ask, how in the world did you guess right that often? Because we got good numbers. That's how. So stay tuned because you'll see a lot more of us weaponizing those numbers as it gets closer to the season. Ramen Noodle Express, toot toot. Here's what I wanted to do, though, because it's pointless. Well, it serves a little bit of a self-esteem purpose, but otherwise it's pointless to just sit here and talk about how right we were. Here's what I want to do now. There are several games that were released, not just week 1. There were several other games that have been released. I think we'll have more coming by the end of next week. Just a little birdie in my ear. But we've got some week 2 games, some week 3. I'm going to show you 3 games from week 6 here, and I want to roll down these, and I want to show you what the Vegas number is, and then I want to show you what we at the Pate State Sportsbook actually have. Not as a projection, but what our line would be on the game today. But keep in mind, our advantage is we don't have to have you bet on this. So this is just our true feel on the game. The first one is Texas at Arkansas in week 2. Big opener for Texas in week 1 against Louisiana. But then they go to Arkansas in week 2. And there's a lot of push back and forth when we did our schedule draft of whether this should be the game that we're at in week 2. We don't have to make that decision yet. But we differ here. We differ from the odds makers. Odds makers have opened this up, and if you haven't already seen the numbers, you can play along with me right now. Texas at Arkansas, what would you put out there? Well, they put out Texas minus 4. We think it's too fat. In fact, we cross a very key number here. We cross field goal. We've got Texas minus 2.5. Full disclosure, I have moved personal finances on this game already. So I like Arkansas there. Again, it is May, and I want to stress it is May, so there are very small limits on these games. Not that yours truly is in a position to push the limits of any sports book out there, but I did take a shekel or 2 and toss it over there on the Hogs because I think that that will come down to the number 3 at the very least before kickoff. How about week 2? Same week, the biggest game, the game on the marquee, the one that we have picked tentatively to attend, is Oregon at Ohio State. Before Jesse even shows you that slider there, what do you think? Because a lot of you have told me you liked Ohio State minus as much as 14, or as many as 14. Someone can correct me on that. And it wasn't there, and we told you it wasn't going to be there. I didn't give you a number the other night, but I told you it's not going to be up near 2 touchdowns. You have the power to bet it up there, but it wasn't going to open there. So here we go. The line that actually got put out on this thing, Oregon at Ohio State in week 2 is Oregon as a 9-point dog, not a 2-touchdown dog. So Ohio State -9 is the open there. I go to our trusty odds that I'm looking at right here, and I look at our power ratings, and we agree. We got them -9.5, so we virtually agree dead on the money with the number that Vegas initially put out on this. I didn't see a ton of movement. So any of you who were of the opinion and wanted to back it up with your own money that Ohio State should be a double-digit or bigger favorite, it wasn't backed up by the professionals. This number did not get assaulted nearly as much as some of these others did. There's one that's a little bit off the radar that I want to go to in week 3 because we took some action on this one. Oklahoma State is at Boise State in week 3. Current line is Oklahoma State -4. So what do you think about this? What do you think about Boise? For that matter, what do you think about Oklahoma State? Because perception is going to go a long way in deciding where this one's going to go. Let me tell you, I hesitate. I know what we have Boise rated at in our own power ratings, but I hesitate in the perception versus reality game with the Broncos. Because you still in the back of your mind, when you think of Boise, the first thing most of you think of is a blue football field, which does matter when they egregiously let them wear matching all blue uniforms on that blue field. But I've spoken my piece on that. But what you think is Chris Peterson heyday. That's what you think. Well, they're 2 coaches removed from that now. Boise's got a very solid program. But I think that some of the residue of how tough it has been for so long to go up there. You had Brian Harsin come in there after that. He's at Auburn now. I think that still is apparent on some of these numbers. Also a little inside baseball here that you may not realize. Boise, for quite a while, numerically, has been given some of the biggest home field advantage baked into point spreads as any team in America. You can justify that however you want to, or you can poo-poo that however you want to. The fact of the matter is, it's been really hard for teams to go in there and perform at a comparable level to the way they would elsewhere. So Vegas opens this thing, Oklahoma State -4. I took some action on Oklahoma State because we've got it at Pate State Sportsbook all the way power rated at Oklahoma State -6.5. I am a big believer in the perception versus reality game here, and I think what our numbers and our model is picking up on is our opinion of Boise. It is not flatlined, but it's probably a little softer than a typical odds maker's opinion out there. I also think that the home field that you would bake in for Boise State in a normal scenario does not apply as much when a Power 5 team goes in there. Because the impact normally that playing at Boise has on teams is the impact that it's having on a non-Power 5 team. Now, you're going to be jacked to have a Power 5 team come in. That's not what I mean. But Oklahoma State's got a locker room full of kids that have played in Norman. I mean, they've gone to Iowa State. They've gone to Texas. The environment's not what's going to shake them. If you got a better football team, then you can beat them. But that's not what's going to shake them. So because of those 2 factors, I got Oklahoma State up close to a touchdown. I think we had them Oklahoma State -6.7, and I rounded it down to 6.5. Week 6 is going to be the biggest week of college football this year, in my not-so-humble opinion. And I got 3 of them right here. Red River Shootout. Hopefully a noon game so that we can pull, well, the plan that we told you about Sunday night. Oklahoma versus Texas. What you think? What do you have? You run your own sports book out there. But keep in mind, the public's going to be able to bet this when you put it out. What line would you put out? Well, the professionals that have to take action on these games put out Sooners -11.5. And so I looked at it, and I'll tell you, initially, I thought that we may lean Texas on this. But then I dove into our Pate State power ratings, and no. We actually agree. Jesse, I think we agreed right on the number. I had Oklahoma -11.5, which is the exact same number that Vegas put out there. It's a monster week, though. There you see Jesse showing it to you. It's a monster week because not only do you have Oklahoma, Texas going on, but you also have a couple of other big games. I can't get to all of them. I got a couple of them to get to right now. But there are monster games like Penn State, Iowa. I don't even have time to talk about it tonight. That could be a huge game. Imagine Penn State beating Wisconsin in week 1. Imagine Iowa beating Indiana and Iowa State weeks 1 and 2. You get down the road a little ways, you're not talking about fringe top 25 teams. You could be talking about a top 10 matchup there that we don't even have time for. That's how loaded this week is. Here's a game we do have time to talk about. The game we'll probably be at, one of at least one that day, maybe more. Alabama at Texas A&M. This one's fun because I noticed a trend with our internal power numbers versus the odds makers' power ratings, and therefore the lines they put on these games. Alabama seems to be about 1 to 1.5 points inflated in the actual lines that have been put out versus what we have internally. So you're going to notice a trend. I'm only going to show you one Alabama game tonight, but as we start to show you our opinion on Alabama games versus the actual Vegas number, you'll notice we're just a little bit smaller on Bama. So what do you think here? Alabama at Texas A&M, probably a night game. We'll see. Texas A&M opens as a 13-point dog. This figures to be Alabama's stiffest competition in the regular season. Bama goes to Florida, by the way. They opened as a 15-point favorite at the Swamp. That's a Week 3 game. Bama minus 13. Pate State Sportsbook, you'll notice a trend here, has Alabama minus 12. So we think there is about a point to a point and a half's worth of inflation, which is just a natural, you can look at it as a tax at this point that you're having to pay if you want to keep betting that team that's been the best in America at any given point over several years now. There's another big game all the way out on the West Coast that we're going to have a chance to talk about down the road. This was the biggest discrepancy. I saved it for the end. The biggest discrepancy between the Vegas numbers on these big games, at least, that got put out and the Pate State Sportsbook model was Utah traveling to USC. Could very well be that the Pac-12 South is on the line here. Herm Edwards is calling me right now, and I guarantee if I answer the phone, he says we got something to say about that. But at the very least, we have Pac-12 championship ramifications here. USC got put out as a 4.5-point favorite in this game. We weren't even close to that. This is, again, a game that I've taken some personal action on already. USC minus 4.5 in the desert, we got USC minus 1.5. And I looked into it a little bit further because that's a 3-point discrepancy from a number that professionals put out, which really raises my eyebrow. If anything, it scares me that we may be wrong. We may be wrong, but it's validated. When I dive into the numbers, it's a combination of us being about a point higher on Utah than they are, and about a point and a half, about 1.75 lower on USC than they are. So we like really already Arkansas plus the points against Texas. I really like Utah plus the points against USC. And hey, I could easily lean Oklahoma State minus 4 right now at Boise. This is the tip of the iceberg relative to what we will be getting into from a betting standpoint as the season gets closer. We will not have time during the week for all the betting talk that we want to get in, which is why at Late Kick Josh on Instagram and Twitter is something you're really going to want to be following.